Welcome to Coffee with Cassie's Mom. We're here to discuss how you can be involved with your son or daughter's journey in becoming a successful college student. Today, I'm here with Leslie Quinn, a registrar at JCCC.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
So nice to have you today. I was just thinking back when my kids were in high school, I could just call up, find anything about their behavior. I could check into their academic status anytime I wanted to. But I noticed there was a really dramatic difference once they went to college. And there was a word called FERPA, and I'd like you to tell me what that is and what the difference is between high school and college and the privacy information.
Absolutely, and I don't think you're alone in the sudden realization that things change when people get into college. A lot of parents have had a lot of access to information in high school, and they're very involved in the very front line of their child's education. And it does shift when a person enters a post-secondary institution. So once you go to college, even if you're still a minor, you are suddenly imbued with rights that give you a certain amount of control over the release of your information. And that is what FERPA is. So it's the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, all the way back from 1974. So it's been around for a long time. And its purpose really is to allow students to have access to their information, to request amendment of their record if they feel there's something that's in error there, and it gives them a certain amount of control over how that information is released. So what that means to you as a parent is that instead of being able to just call up the school and say, hey, I'm just checking on my son or daughter, how are they doing in your class, you really can't do that once they get into college. So at that point, it's the student that has the control over how information is released.
So what way, if I was concerned about my students' grades, for example, how would I be able to find out what is happening? Are you saying the student is the only way I could find that out?
That is a really excellent question. That's actually a question I get a lot. One of the things that I like to talk to parents about is the transition in terms of how you are becoming more of a support system for the student once they go to college. A lot of times parents are much more in the driver's seat of the educational process in high school, and so part of that transition when a student goes from high school to college is learning how do they need to go about handling their own processes in college. So how do they need to get their transcript, or what conversations should they be having with their instructors to find out what their grades are. And so it really becomes the student now who is in charge of acting on those processes. So one of the best things you can do as a parent is to really encourage and support them to go seek out that information, find out what the correct process is, and then go and do that. There definitely are ways that you can have your student give consent for you to have access to information.
Could you share some of those ways where a student can give consent?
And it's really the only way they can give consent is in writing. So we actually have an access authorization to release information form. So if your son or daughter wanted to give consent for you to have information on their academic record or their financial information or anything else, they can actually give that consent in writing. And then once they turn that in, that would allow you to have a conversation with someone like me, or to be able to call and inquire about a balance that's owed on their account, different things like that. But again, this is really the time for them to be learning how to take those steps on their own. So I really like to encourage parents to encourage their son or daughter to take those steps on their own.
I know when my daughter went here to JCCC, we helped with her finances. So she gave us consent in order to talk to him if there was any problems or not. But where would we tell our student to go to get these forms and how to fill them out? Do you have any suggestions?
Yes, absolutely. They're actually available on our website. So if they wanted to print off the form from the web, they could just go to the website and type in authorization to release information, and it should come up as a link. The other way is just to come in person and get the form in the Student Success Center, and that's on the second floor of the Student Center. When they turn the form in, though, it does have to be the student, and they do need to show a photo ID when they turn the form in. If they're not able to bring the form in person, then it has to be accompanied by a copy of their photo ID, and that's just another way that we're protecting the confidentiality of student records. We just want to make sure that the student is actually the one that's giving consent.
So if they can't turn it in themselves, you're saying they need to bring the form and a copy of their ID attached to the form.
That's right. So the student's signature has to be there, and then a copy of their photo ID has to be attached. And that just helps us make sure that this is really a student, the student themselves is actually given the consent.
Well, that is very interesting. Do you have any other things that we need to know about the Privacy Act?
No, I just think it's great that you're asking the question. A lot of parents are very taken aback by that change, and they don't see that coming. A lot of times it's because they are so used to feeling in charge of that process that it can almost feel a little daunting when their son or daughter goes to college. So it's great to be thinking ahead on these things in advance and preparing your child for the fact that you're really going to be in the driver's seat on this college education. So I'm here to support you, I'm here to help you when you need help, but ultimately the ownership is yours, and just helping them get through that process as a support.
It sounds like you're jump-starting us into allowing our kids to go from children to adults.
In a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really kind of one of the goals of the time that we spend in college, is to make that successful launch into adulthood. It's a great way of saying it.
And this is a great place to do it. The first 2 years are really critical, and they change so much in their maturation level in the first 2 years. So those are some great tips on what we can do to move our kid along into adulthood, and just the different privacy rules that we need to follow in order to get the information.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that, because that's one assurance that I would give to parents, is this really is an excellent place. And one thing you can trust about JCCC is we care a great deal about the success of our students. If they are struggling, or if they're having an issue that they need some help with, send them back to us and we will connect them, and we'll try to figure out what we need to do to help them solve the problem.
That's one thing I've really noticed about Johnson County. The teachers, the registrars, everyone that my kids have dealt with here at Johnson County have been so helpful and so informative, and they really want students to have success here.
Yes.
And that's just such a great attitude and a great thing for an academic facility.
It's a joy. We enjoy the work because we like to help people grow and see them succeed. So we love coming here every day just to be able to do that.
Well, thank you for being so passionate about helping our kids to succeed.
Anytime.
That's all for now. For other tips, go to Johnson County's website and click on Coffee with Cassie's Mom menu. And for your students, they can find other videos and insights on Coffee with Cassie. Until next time, remember, Mother Teresa said, peace begins with a smile.